I've got the first look track at now potential tropical cyclone number 9. That one's going to become Imelda, major hurricane Umberto, and how both will bring impacts our way. Your forecast across the Caribbean and the Bahamas starts right now.
This is Meteo Mundo.
Hi friends, Rusty back here at Meteo Mundo. We are your home for Caribbean weather, and it is nice to see you late on this Friday. I hope you're doing well. Potential tropical cyclone number 9 has developed. That was Invest 94L. We now have the first track. We now have our first watches and warnings. I've got all the newest information for you on that first advisory from the Hurricane Center. We'll look at major hurricane Umberto and how this is going to be a very interesting, complicated forecast for days ahead. Let's get started. Meteo Mundo is sponsored by the leading law firm of Central Florida, your hometown homeowners insurance attorneys. They cover the entire state. You get storm damage of any kind, wind, hail, hurricane. They'll walk you through that insurance claim process. It's leanonmelaw.com if you guys would like more information. If you're new to the channel, I was a television meteorologist for 25 years, born and raised in Florida. I have tropical weather expertise. That's why I created this channel. And I got to tell you something, guys, this is a very complicated forecast ahead with both of these storms, particularly PTC 9/Imelda. So we're going to take it nice and slow, look at the things that we know, and then talk about some of the uncertainties that are still in the forecast. But let's get into what's been happening with now potential tropical cyclone number 9. Again, the Hurricane Center designates a system, a PTC, when it's not yet a depression or a storm, but it is going to impact land in the next 24 to 48 hours. This allows them to put a track on the storm and begin to initiate watches and warnings. Now look, it's still a sloppy, disorganized system, but we are beginning to see the low-level center trying to consolidate just northeast of Cuba, just south of the Bahamas, and west of Turks and Caicos. There are still thunderstorms that are all the way back into the eastern sides of the Dominican Republic, but more than likely, this is going to consolidate into a smaller center in the next 24 to 36 hours. I'm not expecting this imminently to develop. It's going to take some time, but as it moves north into the central Bahamas, that will likely occur, and a depression or a tropical storm will form sometime Saturday or at the very latest early on Sunday. But all signs are that, again, it has survived some of the land interaction, some of the higher terrain of Hispaniola, and we're going to get ourselves a tropical storm and potentially even a hurricane. Let's talk about what's happening as far as watches and warnings go. Again, hot off the presses here, first advisory 5 o'clock on this Friday. We have a tropical storm warning now in effect for the central Bahamas, including Cat Island, the Exumas, Long Island, Rum Key, and San Salvador. Those are your islands with the blue slash lines, the lighter blue slashes in the northern Bahamas. Those are going to be your tropical storm watches, and those are in effect for the Eleuthera, New Providence, that's the Nassau area, the Abacos, the Berry Islands, and Grand Bahama. So tropical storm watches and warnings are currently in effect for the Bahamas, as again, we're likely to get Imelda to develop over the weekend. Now, the first track for the Hurricane Center has Imelda staying as a tropical storm as it moves across the Bahamas, then becoming a Category 1 hurricane as it gets closer to the United States East Coast. But I want you to notice one of the big things I'll be talking about in this video. Do you notice how the Hurricane Center's 5-day track, they don't have it actually making landfall? There is a scenario where Imelda could basically stall out near the Carolina or Georgia coastline and then either slowly push inland or even move away. This is a 24-hour gap here. And look how little the Hurricane Center has it traveling. This is a big part of what we'll be talking about in this video. The fact that really the models are completely divided as to whether we get a United States landfall or not. And here's the interesting thing about this. When we're talking about PTC 9 and major hurricane Umberto, I'm telling you right now, the evolution of PTC 9 in just the next 24 hours will ultimately be the biggest factor as to whether we're going to have a U.S. landfall with this system. And I'm going to show you why coming up as well. Now, obviously, for my friends in the Bahamas, I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on Imelda as it develops over the weekend. If you guys are new to the channel, I have live cameras here at Meteo Mundo to help tell the weather story. If it's necessary, I'll be going live tracking these storms with you in Imelda as it moves through the Bahamas. This is the live look to Governor's Harbor in central Eleuthera, the calm before the storm, as they say, my friends. And again, we could get some heavy rainfall in these islands in the coming days, which is why we have the tropical storm watches and warnings. An overcast late Friday afternoon at Long Island in the Bahamas. This is an area that is under tropical storm warnings right now. So again, beginning through Saturday, weather conditions will continue to deteriorate in these spots, and we're already getting some heavy rain and storms as far south as Grand Turk there in the Turks and Caicos. This is from Claudia. This was even yesterday, and you can see the dark skies coming over Grand Turk. And again, areas of the southeast Bahamas, Turks and Caicos could get 4 to 8 inches of rain, and that's the forecast as well. When we're looking at rainfall totals, 4 to 8 inches, could even be for Hispaniola. Portions of Jamaica and southern Cuba could get 2 to 4 inches of rain. Eastern Cuba could get up to a foot of rain. So there's some significant rainfall that could fall along the path of developing Imelda over the next 48 hours or so. So now I want to talk about what I mentioned about how the next 24 hours is going to be paramount to ultimately whether we get a U.S. landfall. First of all, let's talk about the features that are going to be into play. If I bring up the water vapor satellite imagery here, and I'm going to put on our fronts, the green is your moisture-laden air. The red is your drier air. We have a cold front and associated trough digging all the way down into the northern side of the Gulf, okay? So this could keep Imelda a little bit offshore, especially into the Carolinas, especially off the coastline of Florida. However, the weakness north of there might allow there to be an envelope for Imelda to move onshore if it's fast moving, because here's the other factor. Hurricane Umberto, which is a major hurricane at this point in time. Let me bring on the broad imagery here. It's now 115, 20 mile an hour winds. This is a Cat 3. That's the bottom line. Umberto is going to play a factor with Imelda if Imelda is slower. If Imelda is faster, it outruns Umberto, and it's not going to try and pull the storm. We're not going to have what we call that Fujiwara effect, where the storms are actually going to interact and almost try and rotate around each other, okay? The models, the Hurricane Center are basically split 50-50 as to whether that's going to occur. So again, a faster developing Imelda is more likely to have a U.S. landfall because it's going to outrun Umberto. If it slows up, if it's slower to develop, and Umberto becomes parallel, and we'll look at the models coming up, or even can outrun Imelda, likely the steering currents will collapse near the United States East Coast. That's why it would stall out, and then Umberto would slowly pull Imelda offshore. Both scenarios are possibles. Both scenarios on the models are about 50-50. That's why where we see this consolidation of that low-level center and how quickly Imelda begins to move across the Bahamas in just the next 24 hours is paramount to ultimately where it's going to go. All right, so the biggest question mark is still the overall track. A lot of the models have this as a high-end tropical storm or a weak Category 1 hurricane. So there's a lot more consensus right now in the strength. It's the track and the timing of that that is a big problem. Now, obviously as well, if you get a storm that wants to try and stall out, guess what happens? Significant flooding rains are possible not only along the coastline, but interior sections of the Carolinas and back into Georgia as well. I want to show you guys the models. Let's get into that. The first one I'm going to show you guys is the GFS, and then we're going to look at some high resolution models. Now, the reason why I want to show you guys the GFS first, and I'm going to take off some of the areas here so it's just a little bit easier to see, is I want to talk about the potential interaction between Imelda and Gabrielle. All right? Or excuse me, Imelda and Umberto. I'm going back too far. Gabrielle's gone. On the GFS model, this is your deterministic run with a landfall in South Carolina late Monday, early Tuesday. Why? Imelda is outrunning Umberto. Imelda is not going to be influenced by Umberto, and it's going to take the weakness right up into the United States East Coast. So again, a faster developing, and the GFS has this as one of the fastest on all the models, developing systems, then you get a landfall in the United States Southeast. Umberto is still likely to recurve well away, and hopefully far enough west from Bermuda where they don't have direct hurricane impacts. That's the forecast there. But you can clearly see now, even after with a landfall on the GFS model, it doesn't get far inland before it begins to stall out, and we could have copious amounts of rain in portions of the Appalachians, in the Tennessee Valley, and the Southeast just overall. Again, we'll look at some of the potential rainfall impacts coming up, but obviously the track, and if it stalls out, is going to be the significant factor into how much rain could fall across portions of the Southeast. But just to show you again, Imelda outrunning Umberto typically on the models equates into a United States landfall. Let me show you guys some of the high resolution models I have available here. And again, you guys have a specific question about the forecast, feel free to drop it in the comments section below as well. I'm going to switch over to the HRRR model. It's a high resolution rapid refresh. Again, it updates hourly. Not bad. There's a couple of other tropical models that I like as well that are high resolution. I'll show you. But this domain from the HRRR model does get into the southern Bahamas. So I just want to show you that. So we're going to look at a couple of different ones. Now, obviously, when we're talking about Bahamas impacts, right? Widespread heavy rain, significant flooding, likely over the weekend in many areas. Obviously, boats, especially small craft, are going to stay in port. Not only are you going to have developing Imelda, but you're going to have some long period easterlies coming from Umberto that'll be pushing across the open waters of the Atlantic. So we're going to have some really rough surf and sea conditions. But again, 4 to 8 inches of rain in a lot of the central and northern Bahamas, certainly not out of the question. On this HRRR model, again, it stays a relatively sloppy system into the northern Bahamas, certainly no stronger than a mid-range tropical storm. So most of the models that were trying to develop this into a hurricane across the northern side of the Bahamas have backed off in that intensity. When I show you guys the sustained winds, and let me even take off the cone of uncertainty as well, so it's just a little bit easier to see. When we look at the sustained winds here, again, we get into tropical storm strength winds as we get closer to New Providence and Andros and the Eleuthera area where we have the camera there at Governor's Harbor. Most of the sustained tropical storm force winds in the HRRR stay offshore of the Florida East Coast. Now, conditions starting early Sunday are going to go downhill in southeast Florida and the Keys and along the east coast of Florida, but more than likely, we're only going to get brushed along the Florida East Coast line with sustained tropical storm conditions. Now, we'll see down the road where they want to issue tropical storm watches and warnings, potentially hurricane watches and warnings that has not been hoisted so far for the United States East Coast. But just to kind of give you an idea of the evolution over the Bahamas, again, by the end of this, you do have a tighter rotation. Let me bring this up right to Sunday afternoon. It's a little bit farther west and a little bit slower than the GFS, right? So a little bit more impact to Florida, stronger winds on the eastern side for the Abacos and Eleuthera, but a slower system. So the HRRR model, with it being a little bit slower, would again potentially start to slow it down in time. Now this model only goes out 48 hours, but I wanted to show you that. One of the other high resolution models I want to show you is from the Weather Research and Forecast Office. They've got a great mesoscale model as well. Let me bring up the reflectivity with that one. And again, as we go along, you guys have specific questions, please feel free to put it in the comments section below. I'm going to show you so many different models just to give you an idea of how there's a lot more certainty and clarity with what we expect over the Bahamas over the weekend. But beyond that, things really get very complicated for the reasons that I've already mentioned. But the evolution of what is to be Imelda over the Bahamas is going to be the ultimate factor here, right? Does it develop north and east quicker, moves away quicker, or is it slower in allowing Umberto to have more impacts down the road late Sunday and into Monday? So our WRF model, as we call it, is more in line with the HRRR and a little bit farther to the west than where the GFS is and a little bit slower. Again, this is a fantastically high resolution model, so I can bring this up and loop it up for you guys. And just to show you the kind of winds, and we're going to take a quick second and look at the winds in the Bahamas as well, then we're going to get into the potential impacts for the United States East Coast. So I'm going to bring up the winds associated with this. Again, brand new model run here. You can clearly see a much more defined center with this WRF model, right? Which is it's a good tropical model, right? And again, a very high resolution here. So as we get into, this is going to be Sunday morning. If we take a look at sustained winds, near New Providence and Eleuthera, you have a pretty solid tropical storm, right? You have sustained winds that are in that 50-mile-an-hour range. And the last time I looked, and I'm going to go bring up the wind gusts here real quick. Let's clear this off. I'm just going to single frame this for you guys. But just to show you that on the same model, wind gust wise, you are looking at near hurricane force winds as gusts, right? Near 74, 65 to 70. So this would be a not fantastic scenario for the northern Bahamas, bringing very solid tropical storm force winds over Andros and New Providence and Eleuthera, and then up towards the Berry Islands and down the road, the Abacos, Grand Bahama, and Walker's Key, and more than likely even strengthening more as it gets closer to Grand Bahama. Anyone, by the way, with a cruise, obviously I don't have any access to what the cruise lines are going to do, but they are very well aware of the weather that's going to be in the Bahamas over the weekend and early next week, and I'm sure they'll be planning according to that. So now let me show you guys some of the other models. This is the European deterministic model. Here you go. Here comes Imelda. As we get into late Monday, Tuesday, look what it does. It basically stalls out right along the coast, eventually pushing inland, but sitting over the South Carolina coastline for about 24 to 36 hours. So a tropical depression here, likely a tropical storm to a hurricane here, and then basically meandering along the coast. So again, that's one reason why the Hurricane Center really doesn't want to put this storm on shore, because it's really about 50-50 at this point in time. The AI version of the European model has been putting this same solution on. It's slower. Notice how Umberto outruns Imelda and pulls Imelda away. Now, it might stall out a bit, and it could still bring some rain impacts to the Carolinas for the week ahead. So if you look again, Umberto outruns Imelda on the AI version of the European model, and that pulls it back offshore, but not too far, where it could still have impacts to the Carolinas with some surf and sea conditions and probably some squalls along OBX for maybe all the way through next Thursday. You can see that on the model there, maybe even through next Friday. It could be a very slow scenario with the AI version of the model. But just to show you again, here is the biggest difference. The AI version of the Euro has a faster Umberto, a slower Imelda, then you get a storm that curves away. Here comes the Icon, and the Icon has been on this solution the past 3 days. It's even slower with Imelda, stalls it over the Bahamas, makes it a strong storm as it pushes off of the northeast side of the Bahamas, gets pulled up from Umberto, and pulls well away. We can discount this a little bit. It is the farthest outlier in this scenario, but I just wanted to show you because there has been some run-to-run consistency with this Icon model over the past couple of days with this scenario. Here's the HWRF model. Again, high resolution tropical model. This does have landfall, right? Let me take myself off camera real quick. Actually, I don't have that on there. Anyway, this would be high-end tropical storm, low-end hurricane. But just to show you, you do have a storm that develops quickly. By late Sunday, it's already through the Bahamas with a landfall in the Carolinas. So the HWRF landfall in the United States. HAFS A model, all right? Same situation, a little bit farther to the west. It gets right to the coast and stalls out. And this is as far as the HAFS A model takes us, okay? But this one would actually bring some potential tropical storm winds along the Florida coast, the Georgia coastline as well. The HAFS A is a little bit farther west. Now, it doesn't drive it west. There's nothing that I see that pulls us in the peninsula of Florida, none that I've seen that actually have a direct landfall to Georgia, but that doesn't mean places like Savannah won't be seeing some significant impacts. Again, if you live along the Georgia or Carolina coastlines, Savannah, Hilton Head, Charleston, Myrtle Beach, you need to really be paying attention to this storm. This is the overall ensemble members of the GFS. We have two camps. We have two clear camps. You have half of the ensembles moving inland. That is the triangle, purple triangles you see from that deterministic model that I just showed you. The ensemble mean, meaning the average, are going to be your black squares. Look at this. In Camp 2, offshore, stalling just off the Carolina coastline, and then moving back offshore. There are clearly two camps with the GFS model with 94L/Imelda, which of course now is PTC 9. I didn't even have time to update the graphics, right? That we now have PTC 9 and not 94L. Literally, this was just before I came on to record this video. European model, same scenario. two camps. About half of the ensembles inland, half the ensembles, including the average, going back offshore, installing just before the Carolina coastline. It's all going to be dependent on where the low-level center develops and how fast it moves. Most of the models keep what's going to be Imelda as a tropical storm. A few of them sneak it into that Cat 1 strength. And I think ultimately that's where we'll end up being 70, 75, maybe 80 miles an hour as a peak. All right. When we look at the winds associated with this on the half-say model, again, just to show you a strengthening storm over the northern Bahamas, where we could have significant tropical storm force winds for the northwest Bahamas, and again, near the Carolina and Georgia coastline. If I take myself off camera, look at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. That's the max winds with the storm on the half-say. Again, we're teetering high-end tropical storm, low-end category 1. You got to get to 74 to get ourselves a hurricane, and we have that from time to time. Now, you want to talk about a horrible scenario for Georgia and South Carolina. Let's have ourselves a Cat 1 hurricane that decides to stall out for 24 to 36 hours right along the immediate coast. The storm surge, the inundation of water could be prolific in these areas if this plays out. I mean, sure, it's not the worst case scenario to not have a landfalling storm, but if it stalls out that close to the coastline, could see some catastrophic conditions along the Carolina and Georgia coast. Again, I wish there was more clarity in this, but we have to start talking about the highest possibilities. And I think the two scenarios I've laid out are the highest chances: a direct landfall or a stall out just south of the coastline and then moving back away. Here's the half-say when we're talking about rain. This is your simulated reflectivity. So again, you develop a little bit in the wave of rotation in the central Bahamas, lashing waves, squalls, 40, 50 mile an hour winds and some higher gusts, and then the storm really evolves and gets stronger, and we start to see those squalls and feeder bands move in with significant wind and rain, and maybe even a tornado risk as we get late Sunday at the earliest, but more than likely Monday and Tuesday in most of these scenarios. So let's talk about potential rainfall totals. This is the European deterministic model. Again, the European model, deterministic, does not have a landfall. It has it stalling out right off of the coast. But look at your potential totals here. We're talking about more than a foot and maybe even up into that 16 to 20 inch range for portions of the Carolina coast, from the Wilmington area of North Carolina, and then Myrtle Beach down to Charleston. Savannah, Georgia would be well into the higher single digits, but ultimately, a lot of this heavy rain spreads inland in this scenario for you guys as well. I can show you on my computer here, which, by the way, I've been using it. I've been using the other one so much it went to sleep on me. Let's look at the GFS here. Same situation, right? So let me zoom in, take off a couple of these things that come into play here. All right, that's good enough. If we look at the GFS with rainfall totals, you're going to see again some spots in about that same range. Maybe up to near a foot of rain inland. This is just a first blush look, but it gives you an idea that flooding rainfall through portions of this area will be one of the big factors. Now, on the western side, it's going to be weaker. There's going to be a little bit of drier air coming in. Remember, I showed you that water vapor imagery in that red, where certainly Imelda could be a little bit of a lopsided storm. We're right along the path, and east there could be a lot more rain compared to areas west. It's absolutely, if you think that this is not a scenario where Charleston gets 7, 8, 10 inches of rain and Savannah only gets 2 or 3, that's a plausible scenario. We're going to have a lot drier air on the western side. Now, there is a scenario, too, where this thing does just kind of meander back west, and then you get heavier rainfall into southeast Georgia. But at this point, I'm more concerned about South Carolina and North Carolina with the heavier rain, inundation, flooding rains, as well as this. Significant waves. Significant waves. Sorry, let me go back here. Bottom right-hand side of your screen. Significant wave heights. 40, 50-foot waves from Umberto. 15, 20, 25-foot waves with Imelda. Basically, we're going to have churned up waters through the western Atlantic basin for days ahead. Swells coming to the east coast, swells coming to the Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, swells coming to portions of Bermuda as well. It's not a fun scenario. Again, significant wave heights, 40 to 50 feet. For the highest wave heights, you might even be able to double that well offshore, don't get me wrong, but that's a lot of wave action coming to the United States East Coast. It's very hard to put everything I just said into one graphic, but I'm doing the best I can here for kind of the cliff notes of everything. Again, a faster developing Imelda is more likely for a United States landfall, all right? For all the reasons that we just talked about. Potential impacts, especially to Georgia and South and North Carolina, as early as late Sunday, but likely more Monday into Tuesday, look like this. Flooding rains because the storm slows down near the coast. Tropical storm or hurricane force winds near the coast, storm surge, and power outages. Now again, getting into specific numbers at this point in time is a little bit too far away. We really need to see where this storm develops first, and then how the models want to play out the ultimate track once we get a true low-level center. Again, we still yet to have a tropical depression or a tropical storm. Now I wrote this up, and then I checked with the Weather Service office in Charleston, South Carolina, and this is basically what they're telling their residents in their forecast discussion. They're also adding, and of course, it's always important to be prepared to evacuate, to have your hurricane plan, and to be ready to go in coastal areas of these states. And that certainly is what I would pass along as well. Please check in with your local government and your local officials. There is no watches and warnings at this point in time, but make sure that you stay weather aware through the weekend if you live in these spots with the potential for a Category 1 hurricane headed your way early next week. When we look at Humberto, we'll still have to monitor Bermuda, but I'm hoping it takes that errant track between North Carolina and Bermuda, and certainly keeping the hurricane force conditions away, and hopefully even the tropical storm conditions, because again, it's forecast now become a Category 4 hurricane, right? So hopefully we have that swing. At this point in time, I'm not expecting any direct impacts outside of the surf and the sea conditions for the United States East Coast, and that's great news because again, most of the models make this a Cat 4, winds of 140, 150 mile an hour, not wise up to 130 in a couple of instances, and then moving into the northern Atlantic and getting fast just like Gabrielle did as well. Friends, I'm not done, but I appreciate you taking a quick second, hitting that like button for me, subscribing to the channel. You want these tropical updates, you want your daily forecasts across the Caribbean and the Bahamas, and again, I'll be going live when it's necessary to cover the storm for you guys. Thanks for sharing this with your family and friends as well. Again, this is an unusual video, right? We took it really slow talking about the scenarios, but this is a complicated forecast, and I'll be keeping a close eye on things in the coming days. How about a beautiful shot? Live look outside to Corinth, St. Lucia here late on this Friday. I got to take myself off camera here. What a beautiful sunset ahead. Again, we had some water spouts yesterday in St. Lucia, and now things are quieter now that PTC 9 is moving away. A beautiful shot from Oranjestad, Aruba as well. Still some gusty winds there at this point in time, but a beautiful afternoon for my friends there in Aruba. Let's talk about some other areas with some impactful weather for today. We mentioned how Hispaniola will continue to get inundated with some of the rain and storms. There is still some flooding going on as we speak in portions of the DR and Haiti. You can see that a cluster of thunderstorms has actually worked its way back towards the Samana Peninsula, San Pedro de Macorís, La Romana, Punta Cana, all areas with rounds of showers and storms, some heavy rainfall, 50 to 100 millimeters, 2 to 4 inches of rain, not out of the question. Still getting some localized thunderstorms over portions of Puerto Rico. It's not as widespread, but we've seen that today along the northern coastline from San Juan to Arecibo, the Aguadilla area as well. Let me throw these wind gusts on here in just 1 second. That's the wrong product, Rusty. Anyone want a buoy observation? By the way, I do have access to all the buoy data as well. I didn't necessarily mention it, but it kind of goes without saying that sea surface temperatures in the Bahamas are bathwater. They're 28, 29 degrees Celsius, 85 to 87 degrees Fahrenheit in a lot of spots. There is very little wind shear and very little stopping PTC 9 to 1 to get going and get stronger in a hurry once it gets off of the east coast of Cuba. Few showers and storms from our friends in the Leeward Islands today, Anguilla, St. Martin, St. Bart's, a couple of areas that had a couple of showers and a few rumbles of thunder. Noticing a few thunderstorms really getting ramped up over Jamaica. This is an area that has had some very active weather lately. We continue to get numerous storms virtually island-wide. There has been some significant rain and storms. I know that there were thunderstorm at sea warnings today. My friends in Jamaica, please let me know what's been happening here. Look at all of the lightning that has developed in just the last 15 to 30 minutes right over Maypen and Hayes and Old Harbor and Spanish Town, just west of the Kingston area. So significant. Some areas that have been desperate for some rain, likely to be getting some torrential downpours at this point in time. Got to hear from my friends in Jamaica. Let me know in the comments section below. It's been quieter farther west for today with more scattered showers and a few storms. This cold front might even make the northern sides of the Yucatan to bring a couple of showers and storms towards Merida and Cancun over the next couple of days. All right, back out to the broad perspective. Going to show you guys the model here just the next couple of days. So give me 1 second to reload that for y'all. And as always, you have a specific question about the forecast, feel free to drop it in the comments section below. I'm sure I'll be answering a lot of those as well. Remember, I don't give specific vacation advice because everyone has different plans and different weather tolerances, but I can certainly help you out with the overall forecast so you guys can be prepared and make your plans. So again, you know, obviously all eyes will be on what's going to be Imelda and major hurricane Humberto. Another disturbance will be coming into the eastern Caribbean. This one is not going to be developing, but more tropical moisture will promote some localized heavier rainfall over portions of the Lesser Antilles over the weekend. It's not going to be widespread. It's going to be more localized, but from Anguilla all the way down to my friends in TNT, you can see some passing showers and some heavier rain. I'll be monitoring that. I do expect it to dry out a bit beginning tomorrow for Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, whereas Haiti and the Dominican Republic still close enough to PTC 9 where we're going to get more rain. Again, as the storm pulls away, this is going to be a southerly flow here, southeast flow over Hispaniola for additional heavier showers and storms. Additional heavy showers and storms, obviously, for the southeast Bahamas and Turks and Caicos as well. We've already mentioned, again, several inches of rain possible near Jamaica. Someone asked me yesterday, could Jamaica be impacted by the storm? And I said, not directly, but rain and moisture coming over the island, absolutely, in close enough proximity with the south winds where we would get that. Cuba's rain chances are high. I would expect there to be some flooding in the eastern side of Cuba with, again, 8 to 12 inches of rain possible. We're going to have scattered showers and storms for Quintana Roo and most of the northern sides of Central America. My friends in Belize and Honduras, Roatan, Utila, Guanaja, scattered rain, a little bit more widespread, Costa Rica and Panama, near our monsoon trough, and of course down the road, if you live in Bermuda, just make sure you stay weather aware. Late weekend, early next week, we hope to keep Humberto several hundred miles off of your western side. You will be on the stronger east side of the storm, so we could have more impacts overall from Humberto than what we had with Gabrielle, but hopefully no direct tropical storm or hurricane impacts. Friends, I do appreciate you guys. You know I'm going to keep you updated across all of our social media platforms and here on the channel throughout the weekend and early next week. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, X, and Facebook. You want to send me a picture or video, the easiest way to do that, that's mymediamundo@gmail.com. Again, I've said it many times, but I'll say it one more time. You have a specific question, feel free to drop it in the comments section below. While you're down there, thank you for taking a quick second and liking and subscribing. Come join a fantastic weather community. Please remember that Meteo Mundo is sponsored by the Lean Law Firm of Central Florida, your hometown homeowners insurance attorneys. It's storm season. Storm damage of any kind throughout the entire state of Florida. Wind, hail, hurricane, a burst pipe. They can walk you through every step of the insurance claim process. They offer free consultation and policy review, so you really have nothing to lose. Go to leanonmelaw.com for more information. My friends in the Bahamas, my friends in the United States Southeast, I'll be keeping a very close eye on this storm. I will be live as necessary covering it for you. Of course, I'll have these video updates in between. Take care, stay weather aware. I'll see you soon, right here at Meteo Mundo.